It was supposed to be the last signature that erased a marriage forever. Instead, the moment Garrick Holt looked up from the divorce papers and saw his estranged wife standing in the doorway with a rounded belly that could not be hidden anymore, the world seemed to stop breathing. 7 months pregnant. 7 months. And he had never known. His hands trembled so violently that the pen slipped onto the polished wooden table. Every unanswered phone call, every unopened letter, every bitter memory suddenly became meaningless compared to the impossible truth standing only a few feet away. The woman he thought had left his life forever was carrying a child, and the crushing realization arrived far too late to undo the damage already carved into both of their hearts. That if you believe kindness can heal broken hearts, forgiveness can change lives, hope is always worth holding on to, and second chances deserve to be embraced, please take a moment to like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing family that believes compassion always matters. Only a year earlier, Garrick Holt had believed he understood exactly how life worked. He was a respected architect whose days revolved around deadlines, blueprints, and carefully measured expectations. Every decision had a logical explanation. Every problem had a practical solution. Yet marriage refused to follow mathematics. His wife, Corinne Mercer, had always lived with her heart before her head. She collected old books simply because they reminded her of forgotten dreams. She rescued abandoned animals without asking whether there was enough room at home. She remembered birthdays of strangers and handwritten anniversary cards while Garrick remembered construction budgets and quarterly meetings. They loved each other deeply once, but love slowly disappeared beneath misunderstandings that neither realized were becoming permanent. The hardest part was that neither of them had committed a dramatic betrayal. There had been no affair, no violence, no explosive scandal. Their marriage simply eroded under thousands of tiny disappointments. Garrick believed providing financial security was the greatest expression of love. Corinne longed for shared breakfasts, afternoon walks, spontaneous laughter, and the feeling that she mattered more than another business contract. She stopped asking him to come home early because disappointment became more painful than loneliness. Garrick interpreted her silence as independence instead of heartbreak. By the time either recognized the distance between them, resentment had already become an invisible wall. Their separation happened quietly. Corinne packed a few suitcases one bright spring morning while Garrick attended another meeting he believed could not be postponed. She left behind the wedding photographs because she could not bear looking at happier versions of themselves. Garrick returned to an empty house and assumed she simply needed space. Days became weeks. Lawyers became involved. Communication disappeared almost completely. Neither of them realized that only a few days before leaving, Corinne had learned she was expecting a baby. At first she could hardly believe it herself. The pregnancy test remained on the bathroom counter for hours because she kept hoping she had misunderstood it. She considered calling Garrick immediately, but every conversation during those final weeks had ended in frustration. The divorce process had already begun. She convinced herself that telling him during another argument would only make him believe she was trying to stop the separation. Fear replaced courage. She decided to wait until emotions settled. Then life became even more complicated. A routine medical appointment revealed concerns requiring careful monitoring throughout the pregnancy. Stress needed to be minimized. Travel needed to be limited. Corinne moved closer to her widowed aunt in a neighboring town, believing she would eventually find the right time to contact Garrick personally instead of through lawyers. But every week that passed made the conversation seem more impossible than before. Meanwhile, Garrick buried himself in work with almost desperate determination. He convinced himself that success would numb the emptiness waiting inside his quiet home. Friends noticed he laughed less. His mother noticed he stopped celebrating birthdays. Even the employees at his office noticed that the man who once mentored young designers now rarely smiled at anyone. Despite signing legal documents, neither spouse truly stopped loving the other. The final divorce hearing arrived beneath clear blue skies. Garrick entered the courthouse believing the worst pain had already passed months earlier. Corinne arrived carrying a secret impossible to hide beneath her loose cream-colored dress. Every step toward the courtroom felt heavier than the last. The moment their eyes met, time fractured. Garrick's attention fell naturally to her face before drifting downward. Confusion became disbelief. Disbelief became horror. Then came overwhelming guilt. His mind desperately searched for explanations while his heart already knew the answer. The baby could only be his. Corinne lowered her eyes, unable to withstand the storm of emotions crossing his face. Neither spoke for several long moments. The judge noticed immediately that something unexpected had happened and granted both parties additional private time before proceeding. They stepped outside into the courthouse garden where sunlight filtered gently through old maple trees. Birds continued singing as though the universe had not just turned upside down. For the first time in many months, they truly looked at each other instead of through each other. Corinne finally explained everything. She described discovering the pregnancy after their separation, the medical complications, her fear that Garrick would misunderstand her intentions, and the growing impossibility of reaching him once lawyers handled every communication. She admitted making mistakes. She admitted allowing fear to speak louder than hope. Garrick listened without interrupting. Every sentence felt like another stone added to the weight already crushing his conscience. That he remembered ignoring voicemail notifications because they came from unfamiliar numbers. He remembered asking his attorney to handle every message instead of reading them himself. He remembered believing emotional distance was the healthiest way to survive divorce. Only now did he understand how pride had blinded him. For the first time in years, Garrick allowed himself to cry openly, not because the marriage had failed, not because the divorce seemed uncertain, but because 7 months of his child's life had passed without him even knowing that tiny heartbeat existed. Corinne cried too, not out of anger. Out of exhaustion, carrying both grief and new life simultaneously had demanded strength she never believed she possessed. Neither asked whether they would reunite. That question suddenly seemed far less important than becoming the parents their unborn child deserved. They postponed finalizing the divorce, not because everything was magically repaired, because healing required honesty before decisions. Over the following weeks, both attended every remaining medical appointment together. Garrick rearranged his entire work schedule without complaint. Architectural deadlines that once seemed critical suddenly became insignificant beside ultrasound appointments and parenting classes. He listened carefully as doctors explained each milestone. Every image of tiny hands and tiny feet awakened emotions he never imagined possible. Corinne remained cautious. Love had once disappointed her deeply. Trust would not return overnight. She appreciated Garrick's efforts without pretending old wounds had disappeared. That honesty became the strongest foundation they had built in years. Instead of making grand promises, Garrick focused on consistent actions. He prepared healthy meals. He assembled the nursery exactly as Corinne wanted instead of insisting on his own preferences. He attended counseling, not to convince her to stay, but to understand why he had confused financial success with emotional presence. For the first time in adulthood, he confronted uncomfortable truths about himself. He realized he had inherited his father's belief that providing money solved every family problem. His own father had rarely expressed affection through words or time. Garrick unknowingly repeated that pattern, believing sacrifice at work automatically translated into love at home. It never had. Corinne also discovered difficult truths. She admitted withdrawing emotionally long before leaving the marriage. Instead of explaining her loneliness honestly, she expected Garrick to notice invisible pain. When he failed, disappointment quietly transformed into resentment. She learned that silence protects no relationship. Healing became less about assigning blame and more about accepting responsibility. Months earlier they had stood on opposite sides of every conversation. Now they slowly learned to stand beside one another against the real problem instead. One sunny afternoon, while arranging tiny baby clothes together, Garrick found the courage to open a dusty storage box hidden inside the closet. Inside rested every anniversary card Corinne had ever written. He had never thrown them away. She smiled through tears upon discovering he had preserved every handwritten note despite everything. Corinne then revealed something she had kept hidden as well. She unfolded a worn photograph taken during the first year of their marriage. It showed them laughing beneath autumn trees after getting caught in unexpected rain. She admitted carrying that picture inside her purse throughout the separation because she desperately wanted to believe those two smiling people still existed somewhere beneath the hurt. Neither needed dramatic speeches. Hope quietly returned all by itself. the day their daughter arrived was filled entirely with sunshine streaming through hospital windows. Garrick remained beside Corinne from beginning to end, offering encouragement whenever fear threatened to overwhelm her. Hours later, the tiny cry of newborn Lenora filled the room with something neither parent had heard in a very long time: joy. When Garrick held his daughter for the first time, every career achievement, every promotion, every expensive possession faded into complete insignificance. That he understood at that moment that life's greatest accomplishments could never be measured in money. Corinne watched father and daughter together, recognizing genuine transformation that no apology alone could ever prove. Weeks passed, then months. The postponed divorce papers remained untouched, not forgotten, simply unnecessary. One bright afternoon, Garrick invited Corinne back to the same courthouse garden where everything had changed months earlier. The maple tree still stretched across the pathways, children still laughed nearby, life had quietly continued. He carried no expensive jewelry and no dramatic surprises. Only a folded piece of paper. Instead of divorce documents, it contained a handwritten letter. In it, Garrick admitted every failure without making excuses. He thanked Corinne for protecting their daughter with extraordinary courage. He promised never again to confuse success with presence. Most importantly, he explained that if she never wished to remarry him, he would still spend the rest of his life striving to become the father and friend they deserved. Corinne read every word slowly. When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her purse beside the old photograph she had carried for so long. Some things deserve to stay close to the heart, she smiled, not because every scar had disappeared, but because healing had finally become stronger than heartbreak. Together they walked away from the courthouse without filing a single paper. They did not pretend the past had never happened. Instead, they chose to let it become the lesson that shaped a better future. Years later, little Lenora would grow up hearing many stories about courage, forgiveness, and family. Yet her favorite story was always the one about two imperfect people who almost lost everything because they stopped listening, then found each other again because they finally started telling the truth. Their greatest miracle was never simply that a baby had brought them back together. It was that they both chose to become better people after discovering how close they had come to losing what mattered most. Before this story comes to an end, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment sharing what you believe is the strongest foundation of a lasting relationship: trust, communication, forgiveness, patience, or something else from your own experience. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May this reminder stay with you wherever life leads. Sometimes the most important signature is not the one that ends a relationship, but the one written every single day through kindness, understanding, forgiveness, and the quiet choice to love again when hope seems almost gone.